sure it's
Yeah,
on here.
if we put it in the Google Drive, do we get it that way, or should we?
No, just put it on.
Well, if you give me a moment.
Okay.
If it's everything in the Dropbox.
Yes.
Did you upload your photos?
I did, but I just added something to my slides.
But hers is right here. It's ready.
Okay, so what I am going to do
Yeah, that's what I did. I have my laptop. I was like, I put mine, and mine's good in the Dropbox, or I have it in the jump drive, whatever is best.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, my man.
Yeah, I was a
Yes. Hi. Nice to meet you, Katya, right? Yes. How do you Katya?
I know, you see me here.
I can load yours for backup in case she has trouble. We'll just have it on here, right? You got them?
It's good, yeah.
I am two.
Let's just go home.
There is one here.
So Katya, were you part of the workshop that my ear just had last week?
Yeah, oh, okay. We were in Tucson. Yes.
Are they all in there? You want me to take this one off now? You just gave me?
There is
We
one
need that
there
one.
that wasn't in the window.
Yeah, so we had a big, disaster workshop.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Last, no, this February.
Yes, it's on.
Are you making sure all this is there? Yes. All that covers two. But you're choosing?
Probably this one.
That's on now.
I'm gonna talk a little bit about we have these disaster scenarios all over the country.
It says it needs to be repaired or something. It says it needs to be repaired. Okay. There's something wrong with this file. What is this one? Will that work? Let's just down that.
Yeah, that's how they did the workshop in the University of Arizona. We had all the departments from everywhere represented, and we had a travel workshop, and it's just, it is. Last year I was in Arizona full time. Yes, so I'll hold it. Thank you. I'll be right back. Yeah. Because of that disaster scenario.
Okay. That one? Where's this go to?
But she had a place.
Yeah, it would have been great for y'all to be there.
Packet gives here. Yeah, that was the only minor modification for all, so I want to load the wrong one.
I'm good.
Got Monday. Recognize that one. Runners?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, good.
I can
Packet right here, she's good. You only have 4, right?
You don't like the store.
Where's Lori? Lori?
Wait, I don't even see it.
Yes. That's a bad file.
No, it's this one. Those ones are the.
Oh, I guess it was already here. It was already here. 22.
But that's why I was trying to wear it to give myself some color. No, not necessarily.
And as soon as you bring each one of those up, when you click present mode, it'll come on this way. Okay?
May not look.
I'll be back here.
Okay, no, I think I have those. I think, so let's see this one. Yes. So I have pink. I have them in this order. I have them first, Aja, Lori, you, and
Okay. Is that your number 3?
When you're all started all.
Pardon? We are ready. Are we ready? No, we're waiting for let's going to just plug it in. Okay, cool.
Hey, guys. Put those brochures on the table.
Okay, let's get started. We ready? Okay, good morning. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in the territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederation, and in particular on the ancestral lands of the Mohawk Nation, the Guardians of the East Gate. I aim to honor and respect their history and ancestors with my actions. Welcome to the session, Ethics in Research, the ethical challenges of disaster research. My name is Isabel Rivera Collazo, and I'll be your moderator today. I had to take notes because I'm too tired to improvise, so bear with me. Disasters and catastrophes are increasingly common in a changing planet with high population density, very rapid climate and environmental changes, and unsustainable environmental exploitation and extraction to sustain first world lifestyles. As climates continue to change, millions of people are already feeling the direct impact of life-altering catastrophic events. Disasters, then, are wicked problems that are important for societies, have no easy solutions, and need specialists to try and find ways to disentangle and understand them, although not necessarily to fix them. There is a real urgency to conduct our work because disaster-related data is perishable. Many universities and research institutions, like our hosts here, University of California, San Diego, Arizona State, University of Colorado, National Institute of Environmental and Health Sciences, we all recognize their They all recognize their social role towards tackling problems and providing answers and solutions and moving to action. Often, the same sense of urgency leads us researchers to forget the victims themselves. After disasters, the basic needs of neighborhoods, peoples, and communities are severely threatened or collapse completely. But the impacts of catastrophes are not equally distributed in any society. The burden is uneven across cultural defined lines of gender, race, class, caste, age, and so forth. And these complexities accumulate through time. So historical and colonial processes impinge further inequality. While not all individuals living within the geographical zone of a disaster suffer or recover equally, most, if not all, suffer some degree of trauma that affects their mental health, increases their vulnerability and adaptive capacity, and increases their vulnerability and adaptive capacity. As researchers interested in understanding disasters, we are personally aware of the emotional and cultural sensitivities of the communities we interact with. Have we taken a moment to think who will receive the benefit of our work? What are the moral and ethical reasons and responsibilities that guide our actions? Who owns the knowledge we produce? Disasters occur very fast. Have we thought of these questions before activating for emergency research? Have we thought of the long-term impact of our engagement with deeply traumatized populations? Before I introduce our wonderful panel of very strong women, I would like to take a few minutes to share my own experience in the context of Hurricane Maria. I am Boricua, professor in ecological, biological, and human adaptation to climate change in the Department of Anthropology and Scripps Institution of Oceanography of University of California, San Diego. Before that, I was professor at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. My area of expertise is human response to climate change through time. I specialize in environmental archaeology of coastal zones, and specifically on identifying moments in the past when change has happened and people have had to respond to it. I also specialize on theory. How do we organize complex data and articulate multiple sources of information to understand response? Up to 2017, I had been working on studying the past to recover lessons that could be useful in the present and could help us understand the challenges that we're facing in the future. My research had led me to identify, by 2017, that first, in Puerto Rico, long-term traditions based on local, regional, and long-distance networks of support extend since pre-Columbian times and have contributed to the reduction of vulnerabilities. Second, that indigenous, flexible, self-sufficient subsistence practices contributed to resilience in spite of catastrophes. Third, that the move to rigid market economies starting about 60 years ago disintegrated traditional networks, and that these changes have increased local vulnerabilities, enhancing the dependency to global markets and external supply of basic needs. And fourth, that in this scenario, the studied communities, which I studied before Maria, this paper was submitted before the hurricane, in this scenario, the studied communities would be prone to social crisis under the impacts of climate change. When Hurricane Maria hit, I caught myself rereading my article because archaeology had predicted the outcome of disaster. The long-term traditions of local to regional networks reduced vulnerabilities. The diaspora responded, people mobilized. Actually, it was the only help, those networks were the only help that that worked, and it sprung out of familiar and friendship networks. The people who still preserved local and traditional knowledges of food consumption and preparation saw their food security less impacted than others. The dependency on rigid markets, supermarkets, gas stations, medicine, energy generation, phones, etc., saw themselves very distressed at these systems supplying their livelihoods collapsed. And fourth, Hurricane Maria was a trigger that compounded a very complex scenario of accumulated variables that catapulted a severe social crisis. In the month following hurricane, I was part of the diaspora helping my people. Once the emergency turned into acute crisis, and other people took over action, people who are not archaeologists and should be better prepared to respond than me as an archaeologist, I could see how our Boricua culture was ignored in the process of relief and recovery. How my researcher and scientist colleagues of the University of Puerto Rico were overwhelmed under the three realities of being host, researcher, and victim at the same time. How our way of doing things were and are being dismissed in favor of blanket adaptation policies that ignore the cultural heritage, in processes of relief that are strongly reminiscent of conquest, colonization, and ethnic cleansing. These are the ethical problems that I want to emphasize today, because looking at what happened after Dorian in Bahamas, it seems that we have learned very little from disasters such as Katrina, Harvey, Irma, or Maria. Catastrophic events are a problem because they affect the basis of our livelihood, our possibility of securing food, shelter to be safe, the elements that define who we are and how we live. The meaning of being safe are the components of livelihood security, and the components of livelihood security are culturally defined. They are the way we do things. What we eat, how we eat it, what is our state of health, and how we stay healthy, where we live, and how likely are we to recognize the threats that challenge our life. All of these are modulated by culture. Those definitions have deep roots in time. They are inherited, they are modulated by colonization, by historical processes, by traditional memories. They can be recovered in archaeology and oral history in cases where local histories did not make it to official books. They are our cultural heritage. Understanding the deep roots of our vulnerabilities can also help us to identify inequality and injustice and help identify cultural sources of resilience. In the present, the way we are doing things is also accelerating climate change, but that is a topic of another conversation. When relief efforts ignore cultural heritage, they interrupt the transmission of local and traditional knowledges and erase the memory of how to respond to disasters at a local scale. Without that knowledge and memory, people are more vulnerable to be negatively affected in the future. Acknowledging this and the fact that disasters will be more common, I propose as an action item that universities should require all research labs to write and publish their ethical guidelines before disasters occur. These guidelines must include a standard format for informed consent that addresses elements that community leaders and community members will not be able to fathom after disasters. Institutions with long-term interest in particular locations must discuss and develop these guidelines with their partner communities, empowering them to develop their own rules of engagement. And local universities working as hosts must require these guidelines before exposing potentially vulnerable people to researchers. At UC San Diego, we are addressing these topics at different scales. As director of my own research lab, I am working with my student team to develop our own lab guidelines. So far, these are the 7 guidelines that my students have proposed for community engagement. And they also want to develop more for specific to research and to data management. We will first try to respond and go to where help is needed and provide the help that communities need, like what Cecilia was saying this morning, collaborate, not help. Not the type of research that we want, but the type of research that they need. We will second respect communities and their knowledges as our equals, sharing our knowledge, acknowledging their ownership over information, respecting their privacy, and honoring the work of others. We will third consider the implications of our work at personal and academic levels. Reduce harm, being conscious about our impact and mitigating and minimizing it, building and maintaining relationship of trust. Consult, consider, and build consent for locally relevant research, nurture future generations, and maintain best practice. As professor and faculty member, I am taking this further by impacting my actions, my department, and my institution more broadly. As scientists, we know that research is expensive, especially regarding climate change, climate mitigation, risk assessment, vulnerability assessments, and so forth. Each project runs into thousands of dollars. If we add summer salaries, graduate students, and postdocs, we easily run into hundreds of thousands of dollars and more. We cannot continue doing research because it is intellectually stimulating. We need to change our approach and see grant money as investments, because that is what they are. They are taxpayers' money that is invested into our ideas. By adopting ethical guidelines that regulate our work before disasters occur, we can work to protect sensitive individuals and cultural heritage. During the rest of this panel, we will continue exploring these and other topics, going deeper and expanding these ideas, and I'm looking forward to hear what our other panelists have to share as well. Each of my fellow panelists will have 10 minutes to present, and we should have plenty of time for questions and conversations. Our first presenter is Professor Katja Brundiers, Clinical Assistant Professor at Arizona State University.
Thank you, Isabel. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, as you read the title of my presentation, you maybe wonder, why am I here on this panel? And this is why I would like to just take a few minutes and explain the ethical lens that informs my research. And with taking this perspective, I'm also stepping a little bit back from the wonderful and important opening that Isabel has given to us, and I kind of go a little bit further out the onion around ethical considerations for conducting research in disasters, and move more towards the university and what is the role of the university in this, and what does this mean for us as scholars. So I identify with the 8 design aspirations that have been written for our university, and I take them as kind of a guideline in how I understand myself as a scholar and as a participant and contributor of knowledge. And mostly what resonates with me is, for example, leverage our place, transform society, and that sounds a little bit imposing, but what the long explanation means is that as scholars we should connect to the social needs and be in support of catalyzing change as it's being bubbling up from the bottom up. We should value entrepreneurship, be socially embedded in our communities, and conduct use-inspired research. I received my PhD in sustainability science, which the late Robert Cates defined as a different kind of science. Because of the type of problems we are looking at, we look at what's called wicked problems, complex social-ecological problems where social justice is at the core. These are urgent because they cause immediate harm. They're cross-scale, they're place-based, but they transcend. And they're very contested because of the way how people define what is a problem for whom and why. And another important element of sustainability science is that we have a solution-oriented focus. And with this, I don't mean simple technical fixes, but we want to be contributors of doing as much rigorous research as we can do, and as much socially embedded research as we can do on solutions as we do on problems. Sustainability science obviously is highly normative. We have to deal with the values that people have when they speak about what does it mean to recover sustainably. And because of the value-laden dimension, it's imperative for sustainability scholars to really work with communities and stakeholders and invite everyone in the process of co-creating knowledge, owning knowledge, as you were saying, and helping to put it to good use. So then I apply these lenses to my own research on the notion of leveraging disasters for sustainability. And the solution lens I try to bring in through asking questions of who are the people who were able in the midst of devastation and loss to to advance positive change after disasters. How did they do it, and what did they achieve? And I brought this cover from Naomi Klein's booklet when she was invited to come to Puerto Rico. And in this booklet, she summarized the amazing communities and the work that was done in support of grassroots recovery that takes social justice and healing and sustainable development at its heart. With my focus on these people who I call the sustainability change agents, I also developed a deep respect, and I started to learn more about positive psychology and how it can help me explain the actions of these people and their post-traumatic growth. And positive psychology really calls on us to account equally for strengths and weaknesses in people in society, and to support equally people's aspirations as well as healing and pathologies. I was also intrigued to look into how disaster research frames concepts of change and what we can learn from those concepts to help conduct research that fosters positive social change. And you're maybe all familiar with Dennis Milletti's work on saying that disasters are not acts of God, that was Gilbert White, but they are made by design. And this is due to the various layers of vulnerability, starting from root causes to unsafe conditions, and has its meet those human-made layers of vulnerability. And Oliver Smith said, disasters are really a crisis, revealing the inner workings not just of the disaster, but specifically of the communities and the decisions that have led to them. And I wanted to show from a positive side how it revealed and turned people in the Grenfell Towers in London into social activists, advocates for social justice and fighting structural racism as a result of having survived the fires. The last lens that frames my work is the so-called window of opportunity. And I wanted to indicate that there is a lot of research that focuses really on the impacts of hazards and disasters, and much less research on the changes that follow, whether these are deliberate changes or spontaneous, unplanned changes. And the work that exists on these changes focuses heavily on a very important aspect, and this is how powerful elites, sometimes coalitions among governments, capitalists, entrepreneurs, or corporations I should say, have worked together to pursue the interests, often at the expense of pursuing the interests of the broader social good. This means that the green arrow is often much less recognized, and this is the work that's been done by what Mickey Glantz and his colleagues call the zero-order responders, those agents of survival who go out and help others, and those of the sustainability change agents. And to make this a little bit less abstract, I wanted to bring you some illustrations of those sustainability change agents and what they were able to achieve. They did not change the world profoundly, but they planted important seeds, and they were able to grow these seeds, and with this growing the hope that positive social change can be further pursued. On the left side, you see images of Aceh 10 years after the Indian Ocean tsunami devastated their coast. And on Sunday, people come out and do a joint exercise on their park, which they call the Thanks to the World Peace Park, because the upper picture shows you the leading figure who was able to negotiate a peace agreement. And while peace is fragile in Aceh after 30 years of civil war, peace exists 10 years after the Indian Ocean tsunami. And it was in part because he also negotiated the demands of local fishermen of being able to go back to the coastline despite the buffer zone. In order to maintain peace, he had to make this compromise. You also see a group of staff members and instructors with buses behind them. These buses are mobile schools, vocational schools that go into the remote areas and train people who rebuild their earthquake-devastated villages in engineering, construction, and energy. And this is a gender-neutral approach that trains boys and girls, men and women equally. And on the far right, you see images from New Zealand. There is the gentleman who was one of the founder of the first social enterprise at a time where there was almost no legislative framework for social enterprises in New Zealand. And addressing the housing crisis, they developed what they call wiki houses, a system that is community-based, open access, and allows people to build modular, affordable homes that grow and shrink with the size of the family. You see an image of the Evinotokara River, which is on Maori land, and the effort to really naturalize this river and let it be the habitat and the cultural value of the native species in the community it serves. And the bottom is a picture where a laundromat was turned into a jukebox, and for $2 you can dance. And within the first couple of months it made already several $100s, which is an indication how much people were craving for the opportunity to come together and connect, bond socially, and reinstate in them the belief that they need to fight for the democratic rights which have been infringed and limited because of the way the disaster recovery was structured. So, I don't know how I'm doing with time. Okay. Then I just want to say a few things. What matters for conducting ethical research in disasters is, on the one hand, timing. This morning we heard a lot about the immediate response, the preparedness for the response, and my research in Christchurch shows how important it is that we prepare to support positive social change in the long term. Christchurch is set to recover until the year 2040, and when I was there 5 years later, people were at the bottom of the disillusionment, and the Red Cross had just put out this guide on leading through the disaster recovery, a companion through the chaos, to empower people and to embrace the long term. Also, the type of research, and Isabel alluded to it, matters. Can we really support people in their strive to create a new world, a world that reflects their values and visions? What activities should we do? Can we move from extractive research to more co-creative research and support them in developing pilots and test experiments that informs development? And can we be more than the producers of knowledge and really become a collaborator and a co-producer in developing these developments going forwards? And for universities, I think we can learn from what other universities have done. Tulane University has redefined its mission and vision statement, has redirected investments to build facilities that serve the communities, because it noticed Tulane University was geographically embedded in the community, but it was not a part of the communities, and they wanted to build those bridges. They were teaching what they learned to the University of Canterbury, who continued this process. New Zealand also has a national hazard research platform that coordinates